I'm ruthless at this. I want this. If there's a guy behind me that wants this more, he's gonna have to come and he's gonna have to bring it hard, because I'm super hungry for this win.
Delighted to be joined today with us at CrowdStrike from Mercedes-AMG Petronas Formula One team, the six-time Formula One World Drivers' Champion, Lewis Hamilton. Lewis, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Lewis, I want to start. People focus so much on the records that you've broken and the current success. I think it's very easy to forget that it didn't start this way. The path to success is ultimately a long journey with some real hard work. And for those who don't follow Formula One closely, for you, the background that you've come from, very unconventional actually for a racing driver, whether it be that you're the first black Formula One driver or even just as simple as the sort of financial background that you've come from. And I just wonder for you, people have focused so much on your natural talents. And I wonder for you, that gift that you've got, how much that's been a factor in your success and how much that just pure hard work and determination has played a part in your rise to the top.
Yeah, well, I mean, I started, I'm 35 years old. I started racing when I was 8. It was a hobby for me and my dad when I was young. My parents split when I was 2, so I spent the weekends with my dad. My dad was very... he just was unsure of what to do with this little energized bunny kid who was pretty daring. And we had been on a holiday when I was like 5, and he just couldn't get me away from cars. And my dad was actually a mechanic, so I was always really into taking things apart and putting them back together. And if we were at a theme park or wherever it may be, if we come across a go-kart track, which we did when I was 5, I got on a go-kart and they couldn't get me off. So we started racing, and we were new to the world. We didn't know. We loved watching Formula One, and as a kid, that was my dream, to either be that or Superman. But obviously, I'm glad I could be at least one of them. But
both difficult, but yes. Formula One maybe more realistic.
Yeah, and my dad bought an old go-kart from the back of a newspaper, and I think it had been owned by 5 different families, and he resprayed it did all the DIY himself, made it look brand new. We started racing at a local place, and it was something I loved doing. My dad was like, well, if you work hard at school, I will do whatever I can to keep you racing. And it started getting pretty serious quite early on because we're competitive, and it got very expensive. My dad had to remortgage the house. He had 4 jobs at one stage just to keep us karting. And as we started to impress, we started to pick up a couple of people who would give us some free fuel and free tires, which was so appreciated. But yeah, it was a very, very long journey. I got signed after winning my first championship. I got signed when I was 13 to McLaren, and kind of never looked back from them. But it was a kind of if McLaren hadn't come along, I wouldn't have made it, because it is a wealthy sport. Majority of the people that I race with have come from wealthy families, and it's just so expensive. When you go from karting, I mean, today it's twice as expensive, I think, than it was when I was there. And I think when I was semi-pro karting, or pro karting, whatever you want to call it, I think there was hundreds of thousands that were being spent. And then you go to cars and it's $500,000. You have to pay for a team, then it's $1 million. Then in today's world, I think it's $2.5 million once you get to Formula 2. So it is so expensive. So you're not generally going to see working class kids coming through anytime soon, because you can be leapfrogged by wealthy people. But it was just a desire to. I think we struggled a lot. There was times where my dad I'd been in school through the week, and all I could think of is racing. And there were times where my dad's like, we can't race this weekend. We just don't have the money. So, and those were difficult times. But I remember when I did get the opportunity to race, I realized how hard my dad was grafting to get us there on those weekends, even though I was young. And so even to this day, I arrive at Formula One, I've got these championships, and I still arrive and I feel like I have to grab the opportunity with both hands, because firstly, I'm very fortunate to be one of the only 20 drivers here. And, the young me would cut his arm off to be in my position, and more if need be. And so I try and keep that same mentality. And I think what drives me today is still the same thing, that hunger of the struggle that we had when we were younger, that's still there today. I still have that hunger from when, the kids would tell me I was no good, when the parents from other kids would say I was useless and I was never going to make it. And my teachers telling me that. All those different things have just fueled the fire, and this is what you now see winning these races. So
the idea that hard work and determination can get you through and you can achieve things. But I think what's interesting, what you've mentioned there, and I've heard you talk about before, is that you had a really strong belief, and your feelings that if it was an undeniable belief, you couldn't be stopped and you'd achieve it. And I think that sometimes people are willing to work hard, but then they have a moment where they lose belief. For you, is it a process how you sort of reinstall that to maintain that? Because it's not the easiest thing.
Definitely. I think going back to your last question, I probably didn't answer that. You were asking about talent and the hard work. I would say the hard work is the biggest part of it. I think there are definitely drivers and people who we all have, you can't really measure what the talent that we all have. But I've definitely seen people in the past that had a little bit less talent but worked twice as hard and got great results. I've always known that I've had a lot of talent. And in my mind, I was like, well, if I can work just as, twice as hard, 5 times as hard, whatever it is, I could really get somewhere. But I think the personal belief has been key. Continuing to believe. And I think I've only really ever had, I think when I was younger, as I said, I had those people kicking me down, and when you're young, it's not that easy to take on. And I'm a fighter. I'm not one of those. I was shy as a kid, but I would always stand my ground, even if I was up against a much taller kid. I'd never back down. And my dad would just say, "Do you're talking on the track." I mean, I got bullied at school when I was younger, and I wanted to be able to defend myself because I was a fighter, but I'd just get pushed over. I was the weakling, And so I asked my dad when I was 6 if I could go to karate, and I went to karate to learn how to defend myself. And it was a really empowering experience because you learn a lot of discipline, but also you learn to deflect someone coming at you, and gave me so much confidence to be able to stand my ground as a smaller kid. But my dad was basically like, do your talking on the track. And so my whole life, that's what we've done. And we would leave the circuit with all the things that were thrown at us, and there was some interesting experiences. We would leave after winning, and all we just had to do is smile. It was like the most satisfying feeling, And when I was 10, there's the guy that I was fighting, wealthy millionaire family, and they had hired the best mechanic at the time. They're in the best awning, and they had all the best things you could possibly have. And his wheel fell off in the last race, and my dad was my mechanic, So we did it as a family, and it was a really empowering experience. So I drive. That's at the core of who I am. We never give up, and we continue to push through whatever the circumstances.
That sort of mantra that you have, that they never give up, and people might be familiar with that, but I'm just thinking from CrowdStrike, for those watching around the world, there might be people that have seen you have success now in other areas beyond Formula One, and you've moved well beyond that, whether it's into fashion and being an entrepreneur, or even now as a musician and hearing you sing with Christina Aguilera. As a man who's flat out racing, where is that hunger to just keep pushing forwards, to keep coming back and look for more success? And you're putting more pressure on yourself taking on those things, but how is that? How are you finding the energy for that?
I'm not really. I wouldn't say that I'm searching for more success. I don't think that's never been a drive for me. It's never been to break records. It's never been to topple someone else off the top. It's always been out to be able to live to my potential. And of course, I have other interests, as I think we all do. But of course, many of us struggle to have the time to do the other things that we've, whether it's playing a piano or an instrument or learning a language. And a lot of those things fall aside, particularly when you've got family and stuff. And I'm really fortunate now. I mean, I'm trying to learn as much as I can, have and create as many experiences as I can. In my mind, I'm like, if I apply myself the way I have to my racing career, to whatever it is, whether it's fashion, whether it's music, whatever it may be, I know I can do it to a good level, because I know that it doesn't come overnight. I know that it takes a lot of bad days to get the good days. I know that there's that struggle. So I really have an appreciation when I look at other people who are having success. You know, a lot of people see just the tip of the iceberg. And that's kind of the frustrating thing, because people see me turn up and you turn the TV on, you don't see the work we do with the engineers, you don't see the analysis that I do of the track, you don't see the practice starts, you don't see me fine tune the diff on the entry of each and every corner, you don't see me fine tune the brake.
You just see that perfect lap, you know?
Yeah, you see the perfect lap and you're like, oh, you know, and people making excuses, but there's a lot of work that goes on in the background, and no matter how much, you know, as I said, I could easily rest on all the poles and championships that I have. But I come here, I look at the other guys, and they are hungry. And I've got to make sure that I keep this, you know, if there's a day that I don't have the hunger, then that's the day that I probably will stop. But I'm really, really grateful. I'm 35 and I still have, I was just thinking in the last race, man, I'm like, I was going through turn 9, I think it was, and I'm like, I'm ruthless at this. I want this. If there's a guy behind me that wants this more, he's going to have to come and he's going to have to bring it hard, because I'm super hungry for this win. And yeah, as I said, there's an immense amount of work. It's a lot of teamwork, a lot of collaboration. It's finding common ground with people who, you know, the engineers, you know, they're all from the highest universities. They're smartest people that I've come across. And you know, I didn't go to university. I don't have the degrees that they have. However, I have to find a common ground, find a way that we can relate to one another, how I can explain to them what I'm feeling in the car into an engineer's mind, because they see numbers, you know. So that's a massive challenge also, but I think we've found a real sweet spot here, but we're constantly evolving it.
I'm going to come on to that collaboration in a moment, but I want to labour, if I may, for just a second on what you've just spoken about, because I think if we look at society, normally people are either monetarily motivated, so they're chasing a buck, or maybe for the guys with CrowdStrike and that are watching beyond, they're people that want to keep people safe. They want to add security elements and add a layer of protection. But you said there that it's not the success that motivates you, and I guess it's not the money. So if there was one thing that motivates you, it's just the challenge, would you say, or?
It's the challenges, as I said, going back to when I was a kid, is the people telling me I couldn't do something. You know, if someone says you can't do something, I go and do it. And there were really difficult times when I was a kid, you know, and I think many people experience those things and the doubts and all those things that we battle in our minds. I think, yeah, I mean, when I was a kid, I loved Ayrton Senna, and I was like, you know, if I could one day do something that Ayrton has done, every day I come home and I watch the videos of him, and I was just inspired by what he had done. And I was like, wouldn't it be cool one day to race for McLaren? Wouldn't it be cool one day to do something like him, like win 3 world titles, get poles and those kind of things? And I spoke it basically into existence. You know, I matched Ayrton a few years ago, and I raced for McLaren and won them their last world championship, I think it was. So yeah, and naturally it's satisfying when you get these wins and stuff. But I think it's generally more important to other people, the numbers and everything, in terms of perception. You know, I just go home, and Sunday night after the race, after winning the Belgian Grand Prix, you know, I got takeaway at home. I'm doing normal things, and you know, it's like 2 different worlds that I'm living in.
Yeah, don't worry. We're keeping track of the wins. You don't need to. We're keeping our eyes focused on it. Interesting, you mentioned self-doubt there, and we talked earlier about self-belief, and I guess that's a challenge. The self-belief is in one direction, but when you talk about self-doubt, that's almost even more challenging. It's that voice on your shoulder that's actually pulling you back in the other direction. And I just wonder, we can't see behind the visor when you're in the car and you do the perfect pole lap. But I wonder, do you hear that voice when you're in the car? I know, you're not someone who uses a mental coach, so I hope you don't mind me asking. It's quite a personal question, but how you fight that voice off and push that person off your shoulder, because we all hear it, but it's how you ignore it and are able to perform at your best under the most pressure.
Well, firstly, look, I've been doing it a long time. Practice generally makes perfect, I would say. I mean, as I said, I've been racing since I was 8, so it's not my first rodeo. And actually, I've been in Formula 1 for a long time. But I guess I've always had the ability to zone in and get myself into, that's why I have as many qualifying pole laps that I do. But I think it literally, I had this one moment as a kid, as a teen, where when I crossed over into cars and I was crashing all the time. And that was really, really getting to me. And I was really starting to doubt myself. There was almost a moment where maybe we wouldn't continue. And I remember I got up and went for the longest run that I'd ever done. And that's kind of like my meditation. So I do a lot of running, where I'm able to decompress. I found ways of keeping my life, finding the right balance. There was a period of time where all I did was race. I had no personal life, no other interests, and I think that's unhealthy. So I've over the years been able to find these different things, and I think when you're happy at home, you're a happy driver, happy, you're not coming with any baggage, and so when I come to work, I'm free, and I know what. There's, through trial and error, I've managed to find how I prepare to get in the car, which is probably what will work for me, might not work for anyone else. But I don't listen to anyone else telling me this is what you need to do, because there's a lot of people in the world that do that. I think ultimately, for me personally, I had to find my own way and, just find my own rhythm and find out how to get myself centered. When I get in that car and I pull the visor down, it's over. I switch into a special mode, and it's in a feeling of excitement. It's like when you're riding a roller coaster ride and you're excited and the adrenaline's running, but you can control it. And again, since I was a kid, that's when I would come alive. I wasn't good on the textbooks. I wasn't the best with the equations. I wasn't the best in class. And I would always get put down. But when I get in the car, I knew that I had the ability to be someone else, with my visor down. So, yeah. But I don't think that really answers how you move the demon, those voices. Yeah. I generally don't have those now. I think that, as I said, definitely there was times I did. And then I try to be, I make sure I have positive people around me all the time. I don't have anyone that pulls away my energy. So surround myself with really uplifting, positive people. And there are days that I have to tell myself, you are great. And it's okay to acknowledge you're working hard and it's not going right now, but keep at it. You'll get there. There's days that I don't feel fit enough, and I'm like, it's okay. You'll get there. And so I think, me personally, I have to do a lot of talking to myself in that sense, as crazy as that sounds, to remember that there's always a better day up ahead.
Yeah, I think I've seen the journey in you as well, but that idea that you don't just have to work hard in the thing you're doing. By working hard to find joy in life in other areas, it's giving you more strength in the thing that we see you do in driving a car. It's an interesting thing to look at. I think talking of joy, you've got to look at the other side and the down moments. And I think for this year has been challenging for everybody for so many reasons that we couldn't.
Can I interrupt you for a second?
Yeah, please.
The point you mentioned about why I said that I don't search for success, because success can come and go, but you got to find. When I started racing, I got into racing because I loved it. I love cars. I love the experience, and I think what's been really, really, really crucial for me is making sure I hold on to that love. The moment it feels like I'm coming to work and it's, oh God, I'm just going through the motions, is the day that I'm going to lose it. So I think it's finding a way to, so here's an example. I can't be in a meeting I have a limit to how long I can focus in a certain meeting, for example. I've got to step up and step away and then come back. That's just how I operate at my best. So finding how you operate best. So I sit with Bono, my engineer, and I'm like, okay, look, it's all going over my head now. I've got to step out for a minute. I'll go for a quick walk, come back, and I zone back in. And again, it's that communication and finding what works for you, being completely transparent with the guys. That's helped me continue to elevate.
You talked there about the guys and about the team, and I was going to mention what a challenging year this year 2020 has been. As we look at 2020, all of us have had to change what we do. But for those who don't watch Formula One regularly, what yourself and Mercedes-AMG Petronas have achieved, it must be one of the greatest collaborative team efforts in sporting history. And I think undoubtedly, as we work remotely, trying to maintain that collaborative feeling when we're further apart, it can be a challenge. How have you guys done it? How did you make sure at race 1 this year you came out the blocks as fast as you expected to sort of 3 months previously? And of course it was delayed. How did you make sure that collaboration and that real team bond you've built continued?
Well, firstly, I didn't come out the blocks as I had hoped. The first race, I finished 5th, but that didn't deter us. I think during the break, every year we have kind of the same build up. You got the winter break in December, early January. You start getting into training. You start practice in February. There's all the collateral shoots and everything during February. Then you're into off to Australia, and so you go through that same paces. And then this year the race got cancelled, everyone's life got turned upside down, and there were several days where I was really lost. I was like, now what? And then I just got back on the bike. I got back into training. I was able to put on a bit of weight and gain muscle and rehabilitate myself, because I didn't have time to do that. You just kind of stop and go into the next season. So I had time to focus on different things like yoga, stretching, and working on core muscles that I didn't have time to before. And the goal was to arrive at the first race like we'd never left. So set up a lot of Zoom calls with my team and with Bono, and we'll just go. I wanted to learn everything about the car. I wanted to make sure that I left no stone unturned. What were our issues last year? What are the goals this year? Last year, I was not that great in qualifying, which I'm usually really good. But I was strong in the races, but I lost a lot of opportunities through qualifying. So it was picking out what the issues were, where I was weak, and trying to work on that without disturbing our performance in the race. We arrived at the first race, thought that everything was good, made a couple of judgment calls that weren't great, and we finished 5th. And it wasn't the best to come away from, but what I'm conscious of is that you can't change the past. You can't change what happened yesterday or 10 minutes ago. All you can do is work towards shifting and shaping the future. So I never dwell on those difficult races anymore. I just look internally, and we really continue to analyze to the best of our ability. We came to that next race, fixed it. Qualifying was on point, and we won the race. And then we each week, because I don't go to the factory anywhere near as much as I did before, it's really been down to these conversations like this on Zoom, and really asking questions. I'm always texting and emailing my guys, hey, what happened on the start? What happened in after half a second of dropping the clutch? I'm just asking questions all the time, and as much of as a nuisance that can be, that's helped us to grow closer. And when we come to these races, it's strange because we have the trucks are just across the road to where we are now, and when we had these rooms that you're on your own, and it's been so weird not having that connection with all my engineers that are in the room, which I normally sit with them all. And so been just trying to find ways of bridging that gap, because I think that personal relationship that you have with people is so important. Understanding there's days when I'm low and my engineers pick me up, and there's days when they're low and I've got to be there to pick them up. So we're trying to find ways with our distance, talking across the room, trying to make it work. And I think we're going from strength to strength.
I think one of the things that's sort of become more prevalent over the last few years is people being conscious and aware of security, and that's certainly leapt up this year. But I guess for yourself now, what you've been in the public eye, I guess, for 14 years, security, whether it's physical and personal, and data as well, I guess it's been something that's been on your mind for considerably longer than it would be, and I guess you're under more threat than most people would be normally, both at work and at play, I guess. How much of a factor is that in the life that you live and the way you travel and the way you communicate, would you say?
The more and more, as the years go on, the more important security becomes. And particularly in this world where we're all on our phones, if you look on these weekends, we have, I think, it's like everything's top secret here. We've got to keep everything, all the data that we're downloading. I mean, there's 500, I think something like over 500 gigabytes of data that's downloaded over a weekend, and that's traveling back to the factory between us through the weekend as the guys are on the simulator doing the work back in Brackley. The guys that are on the dyno doing the engine during the week, optimizing the engine through the weekend, sending that data over. I mean, it's incredible. Everything's top secret, and the security needed. I can't even comprehend how it's set up, how they create these firewalls. That I was just talking to him, to one of the guys in the background just recently, and they said they're going to hook me up because I don't currently have the system set up at home. And so I'm excited for that.
You put the pressure on them now that they've got to do it now. And I guess for those joining us at CrowdStrike and watching around the world, they're probably thinking, yeah, look, Lewis, that's great. It sounds like good PR. But the reality is they know that when they're going around and telling someone to change their password on their laptop, the tech team are getting a backlash. But I guess it's something that is essential in Formula One.
It's not just Formula One. I mean, look, there are people out there who've had emails hacked, and you could do everything right in your career. You could work on building doing positive things, and your brand is in a going towards the right direction, and then one hacker comes and stuffs it all up, and that's negative news. And so so privacy is essential. And I've been terrified of putting things in the cloud. I don't have anything in the cloud.
We'll make sure we get you that home hookup.
We need the hookup, definitely.
We'll make it happen. Lewis, I want to wrap up with something you said, I think, at the end of last year. And you said, I'm working on a masterpiece, but I haven't quite finished yet. I would love to know what that final masterpiece looks like. What does it look like when it's complete? And what have you got left to achieve?
As I was saying earlier on, 35, I think most drivers have stopped between 37 and 38 in the past. You're a long time retired. That's what I have been told by a lot of people who have retired, and some retired early, some retired too late. I'm going each year, winning the world championship last year, I get to the end of the year and I try to make sure that I enjoy. I really try to make sure that I acknowledge the hard work I've done and enjoy it. But then I'm like, okay, where can you be better? You didn't win every single race. Not every single race was perfect. And I try to be really, I really like to try and dig deep. And as I said, I think coming into this year, I mean, I'm really proud of myself, proud of the work that we're doing, because I think we've managed to raise the bar this year. We're going above and beyond. And that's not easy to do when you've won multiple championships. We could easily just rest on all the success we've had and rock up pretty chilled. But we win these races and we get back in and we're critical. We're like, okay, but this could be better. This is where the limitation is to the car. This, if you went away and you just tweaked this, I could do this to the car. And so I love that challenge, that collaboration that I have with these guys. And I'm always searching for the perfect lap. The last 3 days I've been watching that lap from Spa because it was one of my really one of my best. And that's my 89th pole, so I don't actually remember every single one, but
that one was pretty special.
It was so clean, and as you're trying to get as close to the limit, if not on the limit, for the whole lap, and it's very hard to do. If you step over, you make a mistake. If you go below, you lose time. So I think when I was saying I'm working on a masterpiece, I think it's I'm searching for perfection. Um, and that's not just in the car. That's in engineering, because I am an engineer. That is in the physical side of things. So I'm constantly reading and trying to understand veganism, which I'm a vegan for the last nearly 4 years now, and trying to make sure I'm improving my health, um, my awareness, my reactions. I'm 35. I feel better than I did when I was 25, when I was clogged up with all that crap meat I was eating. So yeah, I'm just trying to evolve. I know that I believe that there's somewhere I can be physically and mentally, and that's what I'm working to get to. I don't know what it's going to be like.
That's great, Lewis. I guess we're all trying to work on our own masterpiece, and I think sometimes we all need a little bit of guidance. And I suppose in your role and position, you're quite focused, and it's something that you're visibly working on every day. For the rest of us who are just finding our feet, if you had any advice to give out, what do you think it would be?
Geez, I've never looked at myself as someone I have to give advice, but I think, I mean, look, I can only really talk about my personal experiences, and I spoke to you earlier about not dwelling on things and on holding on to things, holding ourselves back. Ultimately, we kind of can potentially sometimes get in our own ways. I've learned in my industry not to take things personal. Everyone's going to have their own opinion about things. There's banter within organizations. I generally always just try to focus on trying to be, work on being my higher self, work on being the best version of me possible. And that's educating yourself, reading things. That's, particularly in the world we're in right now, where we're struggling we're still fighting for diversity and inclusion. And it seems like the world's more divided than ever. This is a time where we need to unite and work together. And as I said earlier on, I try to surround myself with people who, if you just look at just one person, if you see the race, you see me with this little lady. I wake up every morning and she's always buzzing. She's always positive. I've never seen her have a particularly negative day. But I think feeding off other people's energy, continuing to believe in yourself, set yourself goals. Every year I start my year and I'm like, these are the things I want to achieve. And I don't tell anybody what those are, because they're private and you don't have to tell anybody. But it's great when you get to the end of the year, and even if there's probably 10 or 12 things that I put down on my list, and I probably only even get through 3 of them. But just getting by one of them is a good thing. But just continue to believe in yourself and know that success is always a great thing. But I generally learn on the worst days the most. The days where you're disappointed in yourself, the days where you question yourself the most, the days where you really make the biggest mistakes. But those are the ones you can learn from most, I think. And it's not how you fall, it's how you get back up, isn't it? So I just want to encourage you guys to go out there and again, just believing in yourself, focus on being the greatest you can, enjoy life, because we only have one time here, and try to find the love that you have for what you do and harness that and take it all the way.
Lewis, absolutely brilliant to speak to you, and I love that idea of those ideas at the start of the year. At the minute, of course, you keep them in your head, but if we tee you up CrowdStrike at home, you can pop them in your phone and they'll be nice and safe. Thanks so much, Lewis.
Thank you.